All right, so this video is kind of for people who are feeling like they don't like the way the world is going right now. It feels kind of bleak. Just as kind of a reminder of you kind of have to make change. You're capable of making change happen in this world. So I just kind of want to start it out by saying, like, man is self-governed above all, right? The founding fathers and really every revolutionary were people just like us who happened to take up the mantle of change. There was nothing destined about them. But so many people seem to forget that, and then they just put them on like a pedestal. They start to believe that like they could never inflict change upon society, and instead they're like, oh, I could never make a difference. The world I live in is just the world I live in. But if you take any leader, any position in the government, up to and including the President of the United States, and you think that there's any meaningful difference between you and them, that's like the biggest mistake that you could make. We're all just kind of people, dude. Don't put the people who happen to be in power right now on any sort of pedestal, okay? Um, the people who like overthrow governments and reform society around them are more like us than anyone realizes. The founding fathers and every other revolutionary were just people who were sick of their government or sick of their circumstances, like, usually sick of their government mistreating them, and they wanted to create something better. And the reason that I'm saying this is just because I feel like I see so much hatred for our government and the things that are going on in the world right now. Um, Especially the government, because every single thing that they do seems to be acting against the interests of us, the people, right? Yet, nobody seems to want to enact change. Um, and I'll edit this a little bit. I feel like online, since I can sort of group with people that share a similar mindset, I end up seeing a lot of people who are fighting for change. But for the most part, in the real world, let's say, they kind of just accept whatever the government does as some sort of like unmodifiable truth, which is crazy to me. And so I'll see like maybe these people will express their distaste in like a passing remark. Like they'll talk about it. They'll say like, "Oh, I'm so pissed about this," but then they forget about it in like a week, you know, and then it's gone. Um, Here's the thing though, our government is here to serve the people. It is made up of people just like us. It is an expression of self-governance that was created by the revolutionary like founding fathers, right? And so without the cooperation of their population, without the support of their population and what they're doing, they are nothing. They have no power, right? They are us. They are us, dude. They work for us. If they created a bill tomorrow, the couple people up at the top there that just hate us above all, they created a bill tomorrow saying that taxes were going to be increased twofold. If we didn't want that, we don't have to succumb to that. Okay? An organization like across the nation saying, no, we're not going to sacrifice so much of our income. We're not going to take such a damaging blow to our ability to like live comfortably. That would force them to walk back to policy, right? We start to view the government as a separate entity than us. Like they're enforcing their will upon us, right? Sometimes it doesn't align with what we want, but oh well, it's not what it has to be. Any action our government takes has to pass our test. And if we sit there idly doing nothing, it automatically passes, right? And so whether they're infringing on our privacy, our free speech, or maybe they're increasing our taxes, like in that example, it's up to us to say, no, 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 this does not pass my test. I don't want that. But when we just let them exert their reign without any form of check-in from us, that's when it gets out of control. And so easily we forget that the American Revolution was fought over, I mean, kind of the exact reasons I was just laying out before. The government doing stuff that we didn't like. They revolted over a tax that was a fraction of what we had or what we have right now. And I mean, sure that they had like other issues contributing to their anger, but so do we. Taxation is not the only problem we face. I think that the core problem of what we face is that power attracts the corrupt and the misguided, and it also just corrupts people like naturally through exposure. Um, like, and the reason that we got to this point is like after the American Revolution, an amazing government was created. I really do believe that the United States is one of the like best governing systems in all of history. But unfortunately, over time, like as I said, power attracts the corrupt. And with so much time having passed since, the formation of our government and people have had time to become less involved with government, they pay less attention and they view it as a separate entity now. It means that the few like bad actors and who are corrupt have been able to seed that corruption and seed themselves deep inside of our government. So now it's really entrenched, and we have to deal with that now. Um, and they've turned it into like a mutilated corpse of what it's intended to be, a representative of the people. And they're like parading it around in front of us, trying to convince us that it's still like this arbiter of truth and justice. It isn't. It isn't, dude. Um, Companies like lobby with our politicians to ensure that the government acts in their interest rather than ours. They bring us into wars that increase our gas prices and reduce our like quality of living. And they're like, and we say something to them, we're like, hey, you guys are hurting the American people, and they don't even flinch. They're basically just telling us to suck it up as they, our own government, hurt our quality of life through their actions. They don't care about us. We mean nothing to them. Like, our politicians will openly state that they joined the government to serve the interests of a foreign nation above our own. Is that not insane? They push for censorship over our freedom and like just our speech in general, which is the one thing that we need to have above all, speech. Um, and like they aim to remove online privacy. That's their big thing now. They're just cracking down on the privacy that you have on the internet. And they say that it's in the name of protecting the children. Where have we heard that before? Every single thing that they do is apparently trying to protect the children. I'll tell you something. I haven't interacted with a piece of technology in my life that didn't have parental controls built in. All right. So when they come up to you and they say, well, we have to restrict the internet, we have to make sure that you give your ID to us so that you can use the internet, um, just to protect the children. If parents were doing their jobs, then children would be protected. All right. So when they say we're protecting the children, we really know what the real end goal is here. More control. All right. And on top of that, they seem to just take every chance to lie to us, right? Whether it's about like the Epstein files, where they just can't seem to help but like protect everyone involved, or about like something else entirely. They just lie whenever possible. And like the biggest lie that they tell us, it's that like it's us versus our neighbor. That's the biggest lie that they tell us, right? The right tells you to hate the left, and the left tells you to hate the right. This is the most powerful tool that they have. It makes us more preoccupied with like fighting each other than focusing on the real problems. What world do we live in where I'm more preoccupied with Steve, my neighbor, having up like a MAGA flag than I am with my government trying to reduce my freedoms on the internet? Like, that's what they do. They tell us that the other side is to blame for all of the problems and dissatisfaction that we have with the world today. And who's on the other side? Your neighbor Steve. Your Aunt Linda. She's the problem. Yeah, sure. Um, and but in reality, they're the ones to blame. All politicians are the same. I don't care what side they're on. They're all the same, and they're the ones to blame, right? The only difference that we would see between like complete Republican control compared to complete Democrat control would be the methodology that they use to make our lives worse. Okay, we are not their priority. The truth is, it is not me versus you, it's us versus them. But to be honest, even in that scenario, it shouldn't be. Like I've said, the government is made up of people just like us, ideally, right? It should be a collaboration between the people and the government because we're all just American citizens, right? And so we want to serve the interest of the everyday man because ideally we are all the everyday man. That's who this country is made up of. But that's not what it seems to be like we're serving anymore. Um, I'm no radical by any means, but I just won't sit idly by and watch as our government that's like allegedly dedicated to serving us seems to treat us as less than human, more and more with like every day that passes. Um, Thomas Jefferson, he once said that the tree of liberty must be refreshed from time to time with the blood of patriots and tyrants. And that quote obviously implies a revolution. It can't really imply anything else. And it may sound like my words up until this point are also implying that. But that's not what I want. That's not what I'm advocating for. I'm just using revolutionaries and those people as an example to demonstrate that average people just like us can inflict change on the world, right? And so we're capable of that. We're capable of making change happen. Um, but I don't want to see violence and bloodshed. I don't believe that it has to come to that. I think that it can happen through better means. Um, and the problems that I mentioned here aren't limited to the government. they apply to nearly everyone in power, whether it's like lone actors, corporations, or our own politicians. They all seem to allow the power to just corrupt them, and they will use it against our interests for some reason. Um, because bribes come in from corporations and it says, hey, ignore the horrible health effects that our product has on the human body and just approve it. Just give it to people. Push it, right? And then you're also going to regulate this industry so that we're one of the only ones that can distribute this product. And for some reason, the politician doesn't look at the greater good of like humanity and American citizens and say, I'm not going to do that. They say, my pockets can get a little bit thicker today. I'm going to take this 10 grand and 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 I'm going to let some American citizens die. It's crazy. But I do believe that we can fight against the people that make our lives worse through peaceful means. It doesn't mean like protest when I say this, because I feel like standing in a rally for a few hours, then going home does nothing. And same thing, like when you see people who are protesting by like sitting in the road and blocking everyday people, just like you and me, from getting where they need to go, you're not really hurting who you think you're hurting, you know? um, they're just like performative actions that have no real impact. So when I say like I want to see change, I feel like it's through a different type of organization and conversation, right? Um, like let's say your local politicians do something that will just inarguably make your life worse. Send them a letter. Make it clear that you're not going to stand for it, you know? Maybe you like threaten um, to move inside the letter, or in real life you just kind of don't comply with the law or policy, right? Or if a government they want to take more of your data, right, to invade your privacy even more, you reach out to them the same way that you would the politician. Like you send them a message and you say, "Hey, dog, I'm not going to use your product anymore. You vote with your wallet, right?" Um, and as I'm saying it, I can hear some comparisons to cancel culture where like people would go after certain companies and they just like brigade it. But this is kind of nothing like cancel culture, what I'm imagining, right? Cancel culture is a public, just like filleting of a company for ideological disagreements, not something that just makes your life worse. Cancel culture buys into that you versus me mentality I was talking about, and it encouraged the demonizing of your neighbor for just them disagreeing with you. And like this only serves to just wedge people more and more, right? It's a tool of the politicians. Um, and so petty politics, I feel like, just aren't what matter anymore. What matters is trying to live a life where my rights and my freedoms aren't constantly being undermined by the powers that be, you know? Um, and so I feel like what holds true power is peaceful noncompliance and resisting, but with goodwill. You do all of these actions with goodwill. You send a letter respectfully. But sternly. You say, "This is how I feel, and if you don't do this, I'm probably just not going to use your product anymore. I'm probably going to move out of this state. I'm going to do something, right?" Um, and that's how we show people what is important to us. We show the government what is important to us, right? I have a hard time believing if they see 90% of the nation saying one thing, they're gonna they're gonna still go against us because they also care about getting reelected, right? Um, Man is self-governed, like I said, so it's about the will of the nation. What does the nation want? The government and these corporations are led by people just like us. They are beholden to us, and they have no right to act against us in the way that they do if we show that we will not, if we don't want it, right? Um, and I think that when people organize in a large enough scale to show the government what we want from them, they have no choice but to change. It's when the people stop paying attention and stop participating in self-governance that it's the few corrupt people that can take charge and act in their own like deluded interests. And it's possible that, even when confronted with an organized population expressing what they want, the people in power still won't change, right? They could look at 90% of the population saying one thing and they could say, actually, my pockets are getting thicker today, whether you like it or not. Um, and so maybe it's too far gone. Maybe we've let it get too far into the grip of power and corruption. And so it's just sewn into the souls of these people in power. But I feel like the only way for it to start is with good faith effort. To try and enact change through violence, as like so many people seem to want to do today, uh, it means that you're only going to attract people who are prone to violence. Those are the people that you'll attract to their cause. And those are not the minds that you want dictating change. Those are the people that think the only way to deal with someone who disagrees with them is to like slit their throat. Those are not righteous people. Those are sick people, dude. Why would why would you want to go in that direction? And so I kind of believe that no quality decision can be made with like complete conviction. Um, to make the right decision, you kind of have to question yourself. You have to scrutinize yourself, and you got to scrutinize your beliefs to ensure that you have solid ground to stand on. And so, like, where is that more applicable than when discussing this idea of enacting change on the world around you, the society around you, and changing the government, changing the systems that you feel like have corruptions within them. Um, and so because of that, I kind of like to also hold this little room for doubt in my brain, and I hold it there, and I'm like, well, what if the government does know better? What if all this talk of like lies and corruption is just one big conspiracy and it has no legs to stand on? Um, and if that's the case, I would rather start out with genuine conversation, because if you can get their attention with genuine conversation, they see like 90% of the population crying out and they're saying, "Hey, we don't trust you. You need to prove to us that we can trust you." And they can say, "Hey, I understand that. This is the proof that we're trustworthy. This is the behind the scenes. Now you know that this is for sure fact." Conversation could resolve any potential miscommunications, right? Um, I'm sure that like many generations before me and before us have thought that things were really bad in their time and they wanted to stand up to it, but like nothing ever came. We could end up being just like them, maybe just overreacting. Um, I just like to be careful because to utter the word revolution at all with seriousness is a monumental thing, and it's not something to take lightly, right? And that's why I believe that like fighting for change through conversation and peaceful expression of our gripes is the only way forward. But the only way it matters is that if we're all sort of united. Um, and that brings up something else. Like I also kind of ask myself, like, what if my dissatisfaction and the things that I have problems with like the powers in the world, they're kind of like unique to me or just a subset of people, and no one in the broader population really cares about these things. They're willing to let these things happen, or they want them to happen. I don't know. Um, and then if that's the case, I wouldn't even want change because the kind of change that I would want would be going against the interest of the majority of the population. And I feel like that's a big thing to have to be able to say my views are not inherently right. So why would I want to like jump to the conclusion of enacting them on everyone else for me? And that's the problem that you get with radicals, right? They're so ready for violence that because they believe that they are right, there is no chance that they are not right. So they jump to violence and they're just ready to make the change without, doubling back to make sure that they're right. Um, so I feel like it's just important to acknowledge, right? If we want the majority interest of the population to be represented, then we kind of have to accept that maybe not all of our opinions fall into what the majority of the population wants. Um, but yeah, so due to that, I believe that the only way proper change can be implemented is like en masse through you, through everyone. You make your voice heard through letters, well, letters are old fashioned, but send an email. I don't know, do something, right? You cry out for the change that you want. And when enough voices are crying out for change, hoping hoping for change through conversation and goodwill, then we can know for certain what change is most desired to us and if those in power will truly serve the people. Because when they see that, they'll have a choice in their hands to either give the people what they want or deny them it and serve their self-interest. Um, and when we talk about like these corrupt people, in my heart of hearts, I truly believe that more often than not, people choose to strive for goodness and morality. I really do. It's just that I think that people are very susceptible to power and corruption. And after so many years of that sort of compounding in society where people can harness this power at the highest levels of the government, um, it's going to take a lot of people taking action for things to change. Um, I don't know. It's also possible that maybe after some time passes, I'll realize like I was really overreacting to the state of the world. But I'd rather be wrong and having tried to do something about it than right and having done nothing. Um, this is just sort of an open letter to anyone else who is sort of dissatisfied with the powers that be. So, yeah.